Day 3 of our mini series on how to prepare for the 2022 customs changes. Thank you for joining again. We're getting closer to the end of the year. Are you ready to explore exports? Let's go. Yep, you know it by now. I've moved to the top right of the corner of the screen so you can see the screen. So today it's complicated again. We are exporting POAO, products of animal origin goods, out of GB to the EU, not to Ireland. And we are not going to make it even more complicated. We're using transit. Man, can it be more difficult? So, in case you don't know who we are a specialized provider of customs and global trade solutions for exporting and importing businesses, and of course their partners such as freight forwarders or agents or whoever wishes to work with us on global trade and customs. We offer a one-stop shop approach, allowing our clients to reach their global customers faster. We would like to help you cut red tape and bureaucracy. We want to de-risk and help you stay compliant. And of course, all of that enables you to grow faster. Here is our one-stop shop proposition, from customs filing, brokerage services, to a helpline, to training online and on demand or live, and of course, bespoke consultancy, your issues, our solutions. And of course, if you want ongoing support for the entire year, then we offer 3 different plans that may help you. So there is a free plan, where all you got to do is register and then you get free stuff. Yoo-hoo. Or there is a low cost option. That's the starter package that gives you really, really good support. And then there is the premium, the professional package, and that gives you even more support, including an hour of bespoke support. So check it out on customsmanager.org. As I said, there are online training courses that you can take on imports, on exports, and it works pretty much the same way it does here. There will be videos, there will be text to read, there will be quizzes. It's pretty interactive, self-paced, and you get a nice shiny certificate in the end. And of course, if you are concerned about importing and exporting and how to move goods and how to make customs declaration, we take on new clients, we take on small traders, we help with POAO goods. We can make customs declaration, file customs declarations into export and imports into GB, and we'd love to work with you. So this is part of the daily series. We've already had 2 sessions and we're going to do another one today. We talked about imports 2 days ago. We talked about customs declarations yesterday. Today's about export. Tomorrow is about POAO, more about these products of animal origin and the IPAFS notification, something about postponed VAT accounting. Seems to be a lot of questions still, and rules of origin, how to make your imports cheaper. And of course, then there is a final checklist just to make sure we've covered everything that you might encounter from 2022 onwards. All right. Now, with the exports, usually people say exports are easier than imports. Except when I prepared this, there were like 10 steps for exports when I remember there were only 6 or 7 for imports. So what's that all about? I don't understand. Anyway, we're going to make it a little complicated. We're going to have POAO goods, as I said, products of animal origin, beef, fish, meat, cheese, milk, all the likes of it. And then we're going to use transit to get it out of GB into, say, France. Okay, so obviously, like with the import, overall preparation, right? So there needs to be EORI numbers flying about. The exporter needs a GB EORI number, but maybe the exporter might also need a French EORI number. And that is simply because somebody needs to lodge the import security declaration or the entry summary declaration into the France ICS system. And that may require a foreign entity to be registered in the EU with a EU EORI number. In the end, it's not going to matter because everybody's going to have so many EORI numbers flying about that we don't know anymore what we're doing. There'll be XI EORI numbers and GB EORI numbers and EU EORI numbers. Anyway, point is, get it. Then again, as we're using transit, the question of authorized consignee and authorized consignor is important. Plus a transit, and I should have written the word guarantee. So obviously, transit guarantee might be needed. So you might be registered in GB in order to start the transit movement from your own premises. That might be you as the exporter, or that might be your customs agent, so like customs manager. or a freight agent who has this guarantee and can move goods under transit procedure. So that would be the authorized consignor. And then incoming into France would be the authorized consignee, so the receiver, and that person also needs to be then authorized for this. And voila, and that's how you move goods under transit. So being an authorized consignee and authorized consignor is subject to authorization. So once in GB, once with the French state. So once you've got this, that's already a good prep. Now, obviously, I didn't mention here registration for various systems, but obviously you need access to computer systems such as the customs filing systems if you're not using an agent, or if you are using an agent, then probably they have that. But somebody needs to make an export declaration and somebody needs to make an import declaration, and these people need access to systems. Also, since we are doing POAO goods, we might need access to the French, or the EU, I should say, veterinary system traces. So an account needs to be open there, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Obviously, the starting point, as before, there has to be an agreement between the buyer and the seller to trade, and this will bring the question of Incoterms. So you want to be thinking about what is the right Incoterm, and that really determines the responsibility, risks, and costs. And as you can see, responsibility, risks, and costs are really big things. So you've got to make sure you've got this right, and you are really, really clear as to who does what, who's the importer, who's the exporter, who's the declarant, all of that good stuff. Up next, POAO preparation. They are quite extensive now. And this is simply because the EU does not have any transition period where you would need to wait for, where you don't need an export health certificate, or it's being introduced in stages. No, everything came at once. So obviously this caused a bit of a issue in 2021 already. So this is not completely new, I hope. But obviously, if you're an exporter and you want to get POAO goods out of the country, the first thing you need to do, apart from being from an establishment which is approved, obviously, so there is the list of all the establishments that can send goods to the EU, and as per the EU-UK TCA, the trade agreement, all UK establishments would by default be listed as approved for sending POAO goods to the EU, unless there are some reasons as to why you should be removed. There is a reasonable chance that you are allowed to send products of animal origin to the EU. Regardless, the exporter needs to appoint the certifying officer. This is a veterinarian, a professional who can come and inspect the goods, and then you can apply for the export health certificate. Now, either the certifying officer can do that, or you can do that. There is an EHC, an online portal, which allows the export health certificate to be applied for. Now, the application will be received in the account, in the relevant account. So it is the exporter, or the person that wants to be certified, that completes everything as much as possible. Then the CO can print that and inspect the goods, and then the CO can stamp and confirm that the goods meet the required standards, and then voila, hand it once stamped, once signed, as appropriate to the exporter. Now, and then there is another step we need to do, and the exporter then sends the scanned copy to the importer in the EU and gives the original to the haulier, because that needs to travel with the goods. So, quite a lot of stuff to do already for POAO goods specifically. Then something in France needs to happen as well. So, or the EU, the importer then needs to submit an import pre-notification, which subsequently creates a common health entry document, which is called a CHED, or CHED. And that has to be done within a time frame as well, at least one working day before the goods arrive. And that has to be done via the EU's Traces NT new technology system. And this also functions as the pre-notification for the border control post in Calais. So assuming we're coming via Calais, obviously, or wherever you enter from. So all of that needs to happen. And once the scanned EHC is then received back at the back by the GB exporter, the EU importer then uploads it into Traces NT. right? So first is the pre-notification, then comes the EHC. Once that's been received and the scanned copy has arrived in France, the importer can then upload it onto Traces NT. Then, once we've done that, we need to turn our attention to the export declaration. So we need to pre-lodge the export declaration, including all the safety and security data, which is known as EXS, exit security information. And that then generates the MRN, the export MRN. Now, we've heard of the MRN before, that's the movement reference number. And customs then assesses the declarations and grants permission to proceed. That's known as P2P, and P2P usually is granted in somewhat 3 seconds or more. Now, then we turn our attention to transit. So we've done the POAO, we've done the export, now we do the transit, right? So here, the customs agent, such as customs manager or whoever, submits the transit declarations in this NCTS system, the new computerized transit system. Once accepted in NCTS, the MRN is generated and the TAD is made up. It can then be printed. The TAD is the transit accompanying document, which holds also the MRN. So now we have used the export MRN to generate the transit MRN, and that is sent to the office of destination. So if this were the port of Marseille, for example, or the town of Marseille, then that's where this TAD would go and arrives, and the arrival is then pending. The paper TAD must then also go with the shipment. So we already have the EHC, and now we have the TAD as well. So then GVMS comes into operation as well, and that is a little bit tricky on the export side and may depend on the port that's using GVMS. So there's specific guidance on Gov.uk on what to do specifically. So I encourage you to look at that. However, overall, the principle remains the same. The TAD MRN that you've just generated, plus the vehicle registration number, plus the crossing details, should normally allow you to generate the GMR. Now, this system is obviously up for evaluation and evolution and changes. So by the time of this recording, things may have already been modified a little bit. So please check official guidance to make sure that this does happen as instructed by the government. Now, once we have the GMR and we have the TAD MRN and we have the EHC, we then are able to move, right? So we can then load the goods, and then with the TAD MRN, the GMR, and the EHC, we can travel. So we arrive at the port, say Dover, for example, we arrive at the ferry check-in, and then where the carrier, so the ferry operator, scans the MRN barcode, and then also the vehicle registration number, merges them all, says, yep, you're good to go, and on you go. So we drive off, we confirm that we have POAO goods, we're now on the ferry. Now we have a beautiful crossing, sun's rising, all beautiful. But in the meantime, the systems of France start to kick into gear and work. So during the crossing, Delta T now is a T for transit, now automatically completes this Office of Transit function. If you watched the video on import, you would have heard this Office of Transit. We're transiting through Calais. So therefore, there has to be an action that has to take place. So the Office of Transit function has to happen, and the risking of the MRN, so checking the MRN and the data and checking whether there is any risk for France and the EU. And as the driver boards the ferry, the screen in the driver's lounge displays the status of the consignment. And if it is, for example, orange douane being customs in French, that means default customs checks. Now, they can be small, paper documents, or they can be extensive. We open the truck and we look at the POAO goods, or it could even be a laboratory testing. Okay, so if we get an orange and not a green, then that's the default position for all POAO goods. Then we have to go to the BCP in Calais, the border control point. And then once we have the veterinary control points in France, we then have to depart the Calais port and follow the signs to the BCP in Calais. And then upon arrival, present the original EHC to the French side administrators. And then they carry out the controls followed by EU law. And then all documents undergo a inspection and identity checks. And then some may be selected for further laboratory checks. If not, then that's great. the BCP will then go into traces and T, update that, the outcome of the inspection, and the goods are then approved for release. We're almost at the end. CHAD and the transit charge are the last steps, and steps 10. So once the checks have been carried out, obviously the French importer has to communicate through email the results of the transit of the results of the inspection, and they do this via email to the Office of Transit, attaching the result of the CHAD and the BCP and the reference of the transit declaration. Driver can then leave the BCP and continues on to the importer, who's as authorized consignee, can then complete the transit movement. The importer checks the NCTS and then sees that the Office of Transit function has been completed, and that is why you needed to send this email. Otherwise, the Office of Transit will not have completed the work. And as the Office of Transit is completed, now you can discharge the TAD form, releasing the POAO goods into free circulation, and then the relevant duties are paid. Now, I did mention earlier in the video there was a step that I may have missed here, and that is the lodging of the import security declaration. And that is true. I should have mentioned that in between. Before you could actually board the ferry, you would need to complete the ICS checks, so import control system on the French side, and for this you will have needed an EORI number. So apologies for that. There is one step in the middle that you need to complete, and that is to lodge an ICS. Now, obviously, possibly the French side can assist with that, but that has to be done prior to the goods actually arriving, regardless of whether they're POAO goods or not. So this is just a security check that happened there in the middle. Wow. As you can see, it takes quite a lot of coordination and cooperation, collaboration. Lots of systems have to be updated, and yeah, it is a little fiddly. But as everything, once you got used to it, it will work just wonderfully. So we hope. Anyway, if you've got questions about this, please reach out to us on customsmanager.org. There's a nice chat function. You can always ask questions there. Yeah, and as always, note that we don't give out legal advice here free on YouTube. This is just information. Our sources are always from government guidance or information at the time that we think is right. But obviously, don't rely on that purely. Verify your sources and make sure that you get a good grip for yourself to understand how it works. And if in doubt, you can always reach out to us. Hey, that's enough for me. Thank you very much for watching. We're getting so close to the end of the year. Only 2 more sleeps. Can you believe it? All right. I'll see you tomorrow. Thank you. Bye.